Awesome. So welcome again, everyone, to this Metagov and CrownShy collaborative community call today. We are very excited to be hosting this and to have you all here. Thanks for joining. Again, my name is Val Alfonte. I'm the community lead at Metagov, and I'll be kind of guiding, but taking more of a back seat, helping facilitate things today on this call. But we have lots of other folks here that I will introduce. But before we begin, I just wanted to kind of give you a little introduction to the space. So, Lee, do you mind sharing your screen and starting us off with our little intro presentation? Great. Cool. So yeah, you are at a community call titled Deliberation That Belongs to Everyone, the Case for Open Source and Interoperable Tools, hosted by CrownShy and Metagov. Next slide, please. And this is our agenda for the day, or for the call. So we will start off with an introduction. We'll go over kind of what the series is and who it's for, but y'all read the Luma probably, so we're not going to go too deep into it. We're going to try to jump into the presentation. We will have some presentations, short, kind of 5-minute presentations, a couple of them to kind of give you a overview of how Metagov thinks about these topics of deliberation, interoperable tools, and how CrownShy thinks of these topics and what they're working on. So you'll have kind of little bursts of information coming in presentation form, but then for the majority of the call, we'll have breakout rooms and discussions to kind of digest the material together, ask questions, and then we'll come back together in a share out form and sort of bring those questions back to the bigger group. And then we'll have a closing kind of shout outs moment and then a closing session. So that's the agenda for this call. Next slide. And briefly, before I pass the mic, I just wanted to introduce, if this is your first time coming to a community call by Metagov, or if you don't even know what Metagov is, then I'm here to represent our organization. We're a laboratory for digital governance, and our mission is to cultivate tools, practices, and communities that enable self-governance in the digital age. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. We try to kind of figure these things out together. You can learn more about us at metagov.org. You can join for various calls like this one. We offer different styles of calls, this one being a more kind of breakout-oriented discussion-based call. And we've got a Slack workspace, a Substack newsletter, and I host a monthly orientation call. So if you're working broadly in this space of digital governance, of civic tech, of deliberation tools, we're potentially a community that you might benefit from being involved in. Next slide. Cool. So I'm about to pass it over to Andy to start, actually. So yeah, we can leave it on this slide, but Andy, I pass it to you now to help me introduce today's session.
Hi there, everybody. Lee, I think you could probably pause that slide for the moment. We'll come back to that one in a bit. So I'm Andy Pace, and I'm the head of engagement and facilitation at CrownShy. And just before we get into this, I want to pop into the chat a link to something that's called a job board. It's very similar to what used to be the Google Jamboards. Very simple space for us to share and communicate on this call. So, of course, we have the chat open. We know that for some of you, you may be on your mobile phone, but if you have access to a browser, then you can open up the job board and you can introduce yourself there. So there are different pages, and as we progress through the call, there'll be an opportunity to use some other boards for the breakout groups. So yeah, brilliant. I can see people coming into that. Fantastic. And yeah, So we're really excited to be kicking off this community call in collaboration with Metagov. And just to introduce you to who we are, to CrownShy, we are a civic technology and participation company. We are currently supporting the Scottish government and other organizations to run meaningful public participation by combining deliberative process design with interoperable open source tools. We'll be discussing the interoperable part in this call. And our platform that we're developing called Caller, it's a Gaelic word, looks like Comhairley, but it's actually pronounced Caller, works to empower facilitators and process designers to compose participatory processes using a variety of tools. And we're very excited because today we have just launched as an open source platform. And I'm going to share the repo here, the GitHub link in the chat. So really excited to announce that and share that with everybody. But just to let you know that these calls are not about us. What we're really aspiring to in this call is we intend to foster a community. And the goals for these calls are really to strengthen connections across the field of deliberative democracy. And what we're trying to do is to encourage collaboration and shared learning. So we want to showcase various different approaches, different open source tools. We want to support innovation and critical reflection on how democratic systems, especially deliberative tech tools, are designed and governed. And rather than focusing on highly specialized technical or theoretical questions, it's a place where people working in different domains can discuss across their disciplines and learn from each other. So if you're wondering, am I in the right place? Is this cool for me? We just want to let you know that this is for people working in the fields of for practitioners, for facilitators, designing and running in-person participatory and deliberative processes. It's for developers and builders creating digital democracy platforms and tools. Also for researchers and academics studying, evaluating, and theorizing democratic innovation. So these calls are cross-disciplinary by intention, and we recognize that people are going to be probably coming into these calls using different language, that have different assumptions, have different starting points. That's all completely fine. But what we do ask is please try to help make this space accessible and explain terms where you think it might be helpful, ask questions when something isn't clear. And of course, there's no such thing as a stupid question. So please, let's, if we're patient and generous with each other, then that will really help create a nice atmosphere for these calls. So and if there's any way that you feel that you could improve the experience of these calls, there's an opportunity for feedback on the last board of the job board. So I'm going to hand back to Val now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy. It's great to collaborate with you. And I see folks typing their introductions in the job board. There's another page, the second page of the job board is extra space for intros and questions. But this first page in the job board, feel free to use it throughout the presentations and ask your questions on the board. And we can consolidate these questions and make sure that they are answered throughout the course of the time we have together. So we're ready to kick off into our first presenter. Our first presenter is from Metagov. Her name is Lee, and she is the research leader behind our interoperable deliberative tools research area. That is led by our research director, whose name is Liz. Unfortunately, Liz couldn't be here today because she's stuck in jury duty, fulfilling her civic duties as she should. So that's cool, but it's inconvenient for us. But we have Lee, and Lee's amazing, works closely with Liz, and is going to, launch us off into understanding Metagov's work and role in the space, facilitating and developing tools for deliberation that are interoperable. And again, if you have questions, feel free to use the job board, use the post-its, write them down. We're going to go through the presentations now, and then we'll have time for discussion after. But Lee, take it away.
Thank you. And sorry for a little bit of the chaos and clicking all the buttons. Every time I admitted someone, I missed and then clicked the slides forward. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you for hearing from me. Yeah, shout out to Liz and her civic duties. I'm just going to introduce really quickly the Metagov research area, Interoperable Deliberative Tools. Again, we will talk about interoperable and probably deliberative as well as we go through this presentation. But just a short little history and kind of overview of like what is this research area, our core purpose, which is like a sub-purpose of that purpose that Val brought us into earlier, is to make today's collective intelligence tools more open, modular, and interoperable, so that we can lay a groundwork for a capture-resistant ecosystem of deliberative tooling, which just means like, hey, who should be in control of our collective governance and our self-rule? Us, instead of corporations or any other powers that may want to take and manipulate our collective intelligence and our self-rule. And so kind of some of the history of how we've worked with this, we were partnered with a group called Mina, who gave us around 200K to redistribute to 14 different projects where we advanced interoperability with them in a very small way. We were just like, hey, have a flat file that describes basically what your data is. And then out of those 21 teams, we had a 2-day offsite, and then we started this larger work stream. I think very early on, after we had this description of, oh, we're going to do these little flat files, we were like, that's not enough. We need interoperability on many levels, where interoperability just means like can work together well. And some of those work streams were focused on, so this is kind of like all the work streams that have come out. But some of those work streams, such as, for example, if you go over here, you can see like podcasts, courses, public education. Some of those work streams are focused on how are we working together well? We're interoperable socially. We are consuming information, we're able to work well together and focus on building a more democratic culture. And then some of them are more focused on technical. So we have the data mesh, which is like run basically by Stuart and Maggie, I think, who was also on this call, which is focused more deeply on how is everybody's data working well together and communicating well together. And then we have facilitation, which is how open facilitation, AI facilitation, how are we better able to communicate together in these processes themselves. So overall, each of these work streams are mainly trying to focus on how do we bring open source tools together to communicate better, both by communicating as people well together and communicating as tools, as data, as all of these things. And the final layer of that, we have like data, hard technical layer, we have social layer, and then we also have kind of a legal layer where it's like, how are each of these tools respecting the legal boundaries of GDPR or any of these requirements, both in Europe and across the world in all these different constituencies, such that we're really respecting and prioritizing the people who are involved, and also making sure that we're not crossing any legal boundaries that have been set up in the countries we're working in. So this is kind of similar to what we're saying. Community government, the goal of what we're doing here, and what I'll move into a little bit, is ensuring that community governance itself can be a form of scalable and sustainable decision-making, and it has to be resistant to platform capture by billionaires, authoritarians, and corporations. And the thing I'll move into here, sorry, there's now a fire alarm going on in the background. Hopefully we don't die. I'm going to ignore it, presumably. But one of the ways in which we're thinking of doing this is by building out this technical infrastructure that is a switchboard. So this is one group. It's one project, which is a core funder of Metagov, which is super helpful and lovely. And they're building out a switchboard, as are many other people. We didn't put in Corla because Corla is the ultimate switchboard, but they'll talk about it later. But a lot of the vision that's coming in here is how are we actually able to ensure that the open source projects that are each individually in their small ways supporting deliberative tooling are actually able to work well together instead of opening a space for larger corporations to build the ultimate governance tool. And so what has been coming up here is how are we able to bring all these different tools together into each of the different layers of what it takes to do self-rule. And that goes all the way from picking who should be involved, from sending out 1 million text messages so that everybody can answer the first bits of information, to getting together, developing an understanding of a core facilitation for an assembly process, building out a steering community, and developing the policies that will come out of these working groups. And that creates a lot of technology, it's a lot of tools, but if we can easily communicate between these tools, then we'll be able to have control instead of ceding that to other entities. And that's pretty much what I have. I think one of the last things that I'll say here is like Metagov is a big open space. We have a really big Slack. There's a interoperable deliberative tools place for like with 250 people like hanging about and checking out. And we are really, really excited to be participating with CrownShy in this project, just to really throw open that big tent and be like, hey, how can everybody be involved in this in a way and like step in? So yeah, just sending this back over to CrownShy to do their spiel, and I'm really excited to be here, and we're really excited to be collaborating.
Thanks so much, Lee, and thank you for persisting through that fire alarm. That must have been tricky. Thank you. So if you could move the slide forward one. Brilliant. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Andy, and I'm a facilitator of deliberative forums. So my talk is going to be a very brief from a very practical perspective. And it's looking at how interoperability is really about how information technology might connect with social technology. So facilitation is itself a form of social technology. It's how we design spaces where people think together, deliberate, make decisions. And that work is changing quite quickly. So before the pandemic, before COVID, citizens' assemblies, for example, were largely in person. And now that participation is moving more online and into different asynchronous spaces. And facilitators are no longer designing only what happens in a room. We're also designing processes that unfold across tools. So people might be engaging with surveys before a session. They might use tools like Polis to surface differences and consensus. They might consult materials asynchronously with AI support and arrive already informed for a facilitated session. So technology is becoming more and more part of the facilitated process itself. And these tools can support deliberation in powerful ways, meaning that they help people understand issues, map out perspectives, and make their limited time together more meaningful. But most of the time, these tools and these environments don't connect. So on to the next slide, please. So when these tools don't connect, the insights sit in different places. It's fragmented. Facilitators spend time stitching processes together across different proprietary tools, and context can get lost between different stages. So interoperability isn't just about a technical feature. It shapes whether facilitators can design coherent deliberative processes where learning, reflection, and participation can build over time. And it creates the possibility of understanding how a group evolves, and we can understand how track, for example, how a participant might think across different stages of a deliberative process. We can track where alignment might emerge and how deliberation might deepen. But I just want to sort of finish off by saying that, from my point of view, at least, I don't think technology should be replacing facilitation. Facilitation, human facilitation involves embodied experiences, all kinds of relational dynamics, human moments, the ability to read a room, even like sharing food together. These are things that technology can't reproduce. But so from a practical perspective, interoperability here is less about replacing facilitation and more about expanding what might become possible to design. So I'm going to hand over now to Stuart from CrownShy, who's our Chief Technology Officer, who's going to talk about the technical side of things.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so I think really when I think about interoperability, it's about taking all the amazing tools that this community has built and folks who are, outside of this community have built, and making them easier for facilitators to pick up and use as a whole instead of a series of parts. And some of their tools allow us to export data, to import data, but for facilitators and for communities who aren't technical, that's actually a really hard challenge to do, and it limits the value and the reach of the tools that we're building. So if we think about this as a technical problem of having, one tool talk to another, being able to talk to the city to gain extra insight into Polo's conversation, or using Harmonica to see the Polo's conversation or something similar, we need we need two main components. We need a common language that we can all talk, so that we're talking about the same thing. And then we need a common way to communicate that language to each other. And by each other here, I mean servers. So you go to the next slide, Andy. So this is kind of what we've been working with on the interoperable tooling group within Metagov. The first step was that common language step, where we've been working to develop and fit an ontology for democracy into kind of the sort of the larger sphere. If we go to the next slide. We got together in Aarhus about 3 or 4 months ago to work on this, a number of tool builders and a number of folks from the ecosystem more generally. And we sat down and we tried to figure out kind of what the language was, what the data components were that spanned all the different projects we're working on. We brought this together into a proposal, and we turned that proposal into a set of code standards, definitions of those kind of primitive data objects that we can then generate as these standards online that are kind of emerging to have joint conversations around different topics and different data structures here. So that's kind of where we are with the the language base of this. You can check that out in the repo, Metagov Subontology. But the next step in the process, I think, is trying to move forward and think about how do we use this language now to get our schools talking to each other. So Andy, if you go to the next slide. Once more. So part of the problem here is that if we look at the top diagram, we have all of our tools out there in the world. So tool 1 might be Polis, tool might be Talk to the City, tool 3 might be Harmonica or something similar. And each one of them are these little silos of data and interaction. And to get them to talk to each other, we can use that common language, but we need some sort of communication medium to let them talk over as well. So we could do that through APIs. We could take APIs and strap them onto each one of these tools, have the tool authors create those API layers, and then hopefully the tools can talk to each other. We still need to find a way to construct the process and figure out how to hook those tools up, which is where something like a coordination layer may come in. But this approach in general has a few cons. Data privacy is really tricky in this context, just because we can't, data gets spread out over all these different tools. They may have different privacy agreements and end user license agreements. It's hard to maintain identity between those systems. The UX is inconsistent, so it can be quite jarring for participants. And there's a lot of work on individual, owners to kind of maintain those APIs and make sure that they're working right. So if we go to the next slide. One way of solving this problem and trying to get around some of those issues is to do something a bit more centralized. And this is kind of what we're doing at CrownShy with Corla. So instead of having all these tools run in their own servers, being maintained by different people, we bring them all into the same server infrastructure, and we create a coordination layer between them. That means we get really strict control over them. We can standardize their UXs, and we kind of have this very tight control over how they talk to each other and how those interoperable processes are built and operate. So there's a lot of value to that, but it's also very centralized, and it means that we as users are a single organization that controls everything. We control what tools are on there. We control how they talk to each other. And it's hard for people to fork that and build their own things. So we can create this switchboard where people can mix and match these tools, but we're still kind of the controlling and centralizing entity. So we want to move away from that in general. The third model, which is the one that's a bit more experimental, if you go to the next slide, sorry, actually, I'll show you quickly what this looks like on Carla. This is our switchboard design where we can sort of layer these different tools together into processes. So just to give you a quick idea what it looks like. If we go to the next slide. So the other way we can start to think about this is, well, what's the problem more generally, and kind of come up with a better solution. So the problem to some extent is that we're coupling together computation and user experience with data. Each tool has its own data store, its own data model, and that kind of silos the data and makes it hard for us to interrupt between different tooling. So what if we change this? What if we went from this kind of model, and if you go to the next slide, to this kind of model, where data lives outside of the tools. The data then can have its own language, and the tools share that data across the ecosystem. That means if tool 1 wants to, tool 2 wants to access some data that tool 1 is created, it can easily read that with user's permission. If you don't like how tool 1 does something, you can build a new tool that talks to the data in the same way and change how that works. And so it gives us a really great way of like building out amazing tools that kind of can support each other or replace each other if people don't like what they're doing. So you go next slide, Andy. And this is a kind of model that's beginning to become popular within kind of the general ecosystem and the data sharing ecosystem in general, where instead of having data embedded in tools, we can use things like personal data stores to allow users to hold their own data. This is things like data wallets, solid data stores, or AT protocols, personal data stores. Tool 1 and tool 2 can write to these personal data stores, and they can read from them as well with users' permission. This distributes the data in a way that requires us to use a common lexicon, a common language, and it allows us to be interoperable in a way that is even beyond kind of like what tool 1 or tool 2 might have thought about using in the first place. So if we skip to the next slide, there's a lot of like really good value to this. We've been doing some tests on this, trying to do some proofs of concept around this kind of idea. This is one using the Solid protocol in Europe to use personal data stores to build a Polis-like interface. And you can check out the code and the demo for that online here. It's still kind of a work in progress, but we're using it to explore how these systems might work and how we might be able to create that shared data space. If you go to the next slide, Andy. But I think the one that we're most excited about, and I think a few other people in this call are as well, are kind of integrating this with something like how Blue Sky works. So Blue Sky, the social media that is trying to replace X, works in a way that's very similar to this. Users, when you create a post on there or a vote on there, all that data lives in your own little personal data store, and applications can listen to that data being produced and do something with it. This is a huge benefit for the democratic scene. So people can engage with an app that helps them produce statements or votes or proposals or anything else, and any other app can listen into that and produce reports, produce summaries, and change things up. So it gives us this shared space, the shared language to work in, and I think there could be a really great push from this community to sort of figure out what a shared protocol for democracy on something like Blue Sky might look like. And so putting that out there is a potential goal for us all. So we skip to the next slide, Andy. So I think there's a lot of challenges in this space that we still need to address. And no matter which of these models we end up choosing for how our tools talk to each other, we do need a common identity standard that can be shared across tools, so that myself as Stuart, is the same person on one tool as he is on another tool, and it doesn't require me to log in repeatedly to different tools, because that's a huge UX nightmare. We can make this as user friendly as possible. This needs to feel like you're using Facebook, not like you're using some esoteric distributed system. We need to figure out how we bring humanity into these systems while still allowing anonymity, and we need to find ways of giving users and communities ownership and control of their data while still ensuring the integrity of the democratic process. Data ownership and integrity are things that we need to solve with zero knowledge proofs or cryptographic solutions. Again, that's a huge challenge. And then the final part of all this is what I'm going to hand over to Shu to talk about, is that we really need as a community to find ways of making the user experience somewhat consistent across the ecosystem. It's really hard for users and jarring to move from one set of expectations to another, and that's something we're thinking about at CrownShy as well. So to talk about that, I'll hand it over to Shu.
Cool, thanks, Stuart. That's amazing. Really talks a lot about how user having difficulties navigating across multiple tools as well. Hi everyone, I'm Shu. I'm head of design of CrownShy, and in our team we work on a lot of different design related projects, including user interface design, user research, and building out component libraries for reusability. Today my share is also very short. I'm gonna share about 3 design realities or challenges we are facing and navigating through in CrownShy, and I hope to share this challenge with the community here, just in case anyone is interested in co-creating designs together. So the first reality is really about fragmentation. In civic tech, users of these tools and platforms often are asked to participate in more than one tools or platforms. They could be asked to log in to Talk to the City and then to Polis later on. And each one of these tools are having different login systems and different interfaces and different logic of interacting with them. And that creates fragmentation of fragmented experience. So our approach has been to create a platform that brings these existing open source tools together and provide a consistent interface and user experience. So the users don't need to create multiple accounts or relearn new systems each time they participate. I think the benefits also beyond that for conversation hosts. They can then set up the conversation or configure the content more streamlinedly. They can focus on the content instead of finding credentials or asking for passwords. And also the long-term benefit is really how we think about designing for a better user experience. We see our users as the citizens, the civics. And if we think of their training program to grow their civic muscles, this platform really enables them to have a reflection space, review space for all the participations, all the engagements they've ever taken part in, and built up the muscle or the capacity to engage consistently and more thoughtfully over time. Next slide. Yeah, the second reality is about very simply UX and accessibility issues. There are always gaps in lots of different digital tools, and a lot of time because many civic tools are built very quickly or urgently. The amazing thing is they all kind of work, but the difficult part is for the users is the accessibility and usability aren't always consistent. So being in this very unique position, we look at so many different tools and platforms. It's really interesting for us to think about how do we combine them and come up with a shared design language. So in CrownShy, we're also building a component library, and we're aiming to make them more open source and follow the WCAG 2.2 AA level guidelines. Next slide, please. The last design reality is something we talked about many times, which is the language. Different tools use different words to describe very similar concepts. It could be conversations, engagements, participation, projects, or smart surveys, and they might just all mean the same thing or slightly different ways of engagement. This really creates cognitive loads and really troubles the users to context switch for different ways of participate, even on the same conversation. So we're exploring the creation of this shared ontology for the community, but also from my perspective for the user to be able to look at the same common vocabulary when they are interacting with different models and concepts of the tools behind. So yeah, I think what is important is the interface design is very important, the user experience design is very important, but also sharing meaning and sharing how we think about different ways of engagement, different touch points is also very important. So while we are working on these challenges, well, we're very also welcoming to anyone who are also thinking about these challenges and willing to collaborate with us, and please reach out and let us know. Thank you. I'm gonna hand over to Val.
Yes, awesome. Thank you to our presenters. Hopefully you all learned something. And I know for me, like I'm relatively new to this space myself. So maybe you're coming at this from me. Maybe you're a seasoned developer and all of this is like, this makes so much sense. And maybe you're like, I just care about democracy and I want to learn. So no matter where you're coming from, I hope that this presentation speaks to you in some way. And now we are going to enter the discussion part. And so really want to encourage, I'm going to make breakout groups. There are going to be 6 of them. You're going to be in a small group and just meet the people in your room, share a little bit about something that stuck out to you from the presentation, a question that you have, anything you'd like. Please use the Jot board as well. There are 6 breakout group Jot boards that you can use to take notes from your discussion or raise questions. But this is now the opportunity to meet each other, see who else is here, see who you might work with, and collaborate with, and yeah, just kind of debrief with other people who might be on a different side of this puzzle from you, and that will hopefully be valuable. So that's what we're gonna head into next. And so yeah, head to the job board and enjoy your discussions, and we'll call you back to close out in about 10-15 minutes. Hey everyone, welcome back. We're gonna go through a round of rapid fire share outs from the groups because breakout rooms can be segmenting, and in the spirit of interoperability, we want to try to spread as much knowledge as we can given all the constraints. So I'm gonna ask for a volunteer from each breakout room, and really no pressure, just kind of give us like high level key takeaways, ideas, questions, whatever it is that you discussed. Um, yeah, let's go around. And Joseph, which breakout room were you?
Breakout 5. Yeah,
All
I guess
right.
I can volunteer it.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah.
Appreciate
Hi
it.
everyone. Joseph here. Um, yeah. So our group, we kind of spend like most of the time just doing introductions and going around. Realize that some of us have connected before, so it's really a small world. I guess what we are discussing 3 main things. First was just a quick one about AI agents. So if we delegate deliberation to AI agents, how do we do it in a way that is less problematic? And do we need shared interfaces if these agents can like interface with like any arbitrary like thing out there? Next, we also discuss about like working in this space. Hope and dream would be to make it easier to find resources and collaborators. Especially for individuals who might be like working on their own like little projects. So I think yeah, networks like Metagov is great to connect with everyone here. We also had a quick discussion about licensing of open source and like copyleft. We didn't have time to like really go in depth. But yeah, it's the usual like any open source project will face problems with licensing as it gets like adoption and popularity and scales up. So yeah, that's about it.
Great job. Thank you so much, Joseph, for jumping in there. And I know we booked this until or like we sent out the Luma for 75-minute call, but of course, figure many of you are very busy solving important problems in our world. So if you have to drop, no problem. Except I just want to let you know quick before we get to the hour that if you want to continue these discussions, the Metagov Slack is a great place to do so, and specifically the deliberative tools and interop channel. So on Jotboard number 9, community shout outs and feedback. That's kind of our closing slide, our closing board. You can see information about the next call that we'll have. We'll do these again. This is going to be a series. And you can also see the channel that I just mentioned and hop on in. So yeah, metagov.org. But anyways, next breakout group, let's call out breakout group 6. Anyone from 6? Y'all have a lot on your job board. Anyone willing to jump on in and let us know some things you talked about?
not sure if people remember what breakout rooms they were in.
Fair enough.
I think Barney is trying to brief, but he's on mute.
Oh.
Were you talking to us, Barney? No?
I was mumbling to myself, but there you are.
Okay. Okay. So do you want to do a break? Yeah.
I was just going to say that we agreed that the social part is quite critical in this whole thing, but the technical presentation earlier at the beginning was way over my head. I didn't understand all the lingo, but it was very interesting. I'll let one of the others come in now.
Yeah, so Barney was saying that maybe it's time to play down the lingo to more non-techie people if we are going to involve community involvement, if we're going to have community involvement. And also, there was point that it's not about techies and not techies, but also people that are dealing with civic issues are sort of fatigued by the tech solutionism and tech acceleration and trying to solve everything. So maybe if we can put the human in the center of all of these tech activities, minding that if we're talking within a global and worldview context, so we also have to mind that there will be accessibility issues, security and safety issues, and as well as like a digital gap that still exists. And yeah, so and Zach had really valid points. So if you wanna comment, Zach, about the social aspects of things as well, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Barney already mentioned, but just this focus not only on the technical side, but also on the social resonance side of how do we bring people into the conversation and to be able to understand and to be able to take action both locally and globally. So not just a discussion on protocols and language, which I also like, but it doesn't work for the whole all the time. So yeah. And one thing I like that Naima said was it's not realistic to have everything open for every jurisdiction globally. I know maybe from my perspective, having everything open and accessible for all the AI to help us collectively organize is great, but in some jurisdictions that can be dangerous. So thank you for raising that too.
Yeah, saying that I'm a big advocate of the open movement, and I've worked on opening data with Creative Commons for a big portion of my life. So, but in certain jurisdictions, I'm part of the world. Yeah, it's a security breach of some sort. So I'm all in for the idea of having that data siloed and then the technology shared. So this can be very beneficial. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. Yes, such important contributions. And the social side sounds way more up my alley personally than the technical side as well. So very excited, eager to jam on that stuff as well in the Metagov Slack. Let's now jump back to breakout group 1 and kind of go around that way. So anyone from breakout group 1 want to share out?
I can do that. So is that right? Yeah. So we started from one of our members in the group was very excited to be helping out already. So the big question is, how do we contribute? How open is CrownShy, and how does the team work? Has the team gone into some kind of bureaucracy already? So our kind of first layer of discussion was that we're still too young to get into that sort of things. And it's pretty much a soft soil that we can all kind of sculpture together. So it's really early enough to intervene before before anything goes too wrong. So really open and trying to make things more transparent is one of our philosophies, and kind of not make into opening our design system as well, so we can then iterate on it together. And there are also other intros and feedbacks from the group. There's also a conversation about how so what one person asked about how the current standards like. I'm really curious about the technical side of things. And another person is more looking at the user side, having years experience organizing citizen assemblies. So I feel like this is really a really good balance of backgrounds kind of group that we talk about different things, but also where I can sense a general vibe of wanting to contribute to what we all presented today. So thanks a lot for group one.
Yes, incredible. Thank you. Group two. Anyone from group two?
I can take that. Yeah, we had some like an introductions and stuff. So I was in with Matthew, Will, and I can't remember if it's Sophie or Sophia. I can't actually see you on the board, but yeah, I was asking Sophie. Just that we'd obviously talked a lot about like different tools, like open source tools that could be used in this space, and just whether people had any experience. Matthew mentioned like trying to use a polis for something, and he kind of mentioned like nearly getting it over the line, but just like kind of fell apart a little bit in the end, and just mentioned it being feeling a little bit like inaccessible. And one of the things we kind of took away, or I took away from what people were saying was just sometimes there's a lot of like tools out there, and it can be one of the challenges can just be like knowing what tools can be useful for like specific use cases and things. So that's maybe, an interesting thing I find like kind of working on some of this stuff is just whether people actually find it useful or not or easy to use. So that, yeah, that's maybe like a challenge a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you. Some patterns forming on things that folks were talking about, which is great. And breakout group three.
Right. Yeah, we had just a little chat that went in different directions and kind of finding out a little bit more about each other and the work that we do. I asked some questions to Lee about Metagov, and one of the things that stuck for me from that was about the aim of upskilling every participant as a goal. So, automation can obviously make us lazy and or it can, just we don't exercise our minds as much. But if we try to use technology to increase our abilities and our democratic muscles, that could be something fantastic, but it's also a huge challenge. And then we also had, I think, Brandon, who was sharing his work on the Mediators Foundations and Bets Together America. Brandon, if you want to, part of this call is about people shouting out and sharing what they're doing. So if you want to let the call know what you're doing, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so I got recruited into this with the Mediators Foundation, and they might have, I think, already had some talks with the Metagov team for some time and understanding like what the needs are. So I kind of new to this, but like there was a need for like kind of a canonical data interoperability layer to be able to understand insights and gap analysis and root cause analysis and multidimensional impact measurement for people who are doing, their civic hub leaders or organizing or getting people's opinions or ideas, in communities, both online and virtual. And so there's a lot of this happening. There's actually several tools you guys were mentioning that are being used in those contexts. And there's a need for, this civic intelligence infrastructure. At this point, actually, we're not even sure if some people are already kind of building some of this. Probably some of it, but some of it not. So that's what, I put together this presentation, which is at this point kind of a wish list. And be nice to have some further conversations with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, if folks have ideas for future presentations at the starting point of these types of calls or ways that we can, yeah, continue to incorporate your ideas and feedback and to support your work. That is what we want to know on job board number 9. Please, yeah, feel free to share. And our last group, breakout group 4, I don't see anything on your job board, but you probably were just so excited about your conversation. Let me know if anyone from that group wants to share.
I can summarize hopefully quickly what we chatted about. We did a similar to everybody else's round of introductions. We had a nice mix of people who are tool builders and sort of people who are more on the facilitation and organizing side. And so we had a good conversation about a lot of things we just discussed about where like how to support this, how they don't. There was some interesting conversations around the accessibility angle with a lot of the tools we have out there for people who are neurodivergent, and how do we support them? How do we, some of these tools may be very off-putting from them, and I think that fits into some of what we were saying around UX and being able to sort of retool these things as we need to through interoperability. We also chatted a little bit about the kind of the approach of bringing these tools together through using AI agents versus doing something a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more structured. And I think that's an ongoing conversation as well. So yeah, a lot of what we covered from everybody else here. But yeah, those were the kind of things we chatted about.
Awesome. Incredible. So thank you all. We made it through our programming with 5 minutes to close out. Thank you all for your energy and contributions and everything. Yeah, this never happens. Ending a call kind of on time. Andy,
Well, yeah, I just want to put into the chat here a couple of things. So on the job board there's the link to the last board, which is where you can share any information that you feel. We want to have a bit more space for community shout outs and these calls. So in subsequent calls, we'll try and make the presentation a little less long and more time to have that kind of thing. Just to let you know as well, next session is going to be on March the 17th, and that's going to be the same time of 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. Eastern Time US. And the link is there. It may say a different time on the Loom. I don't know if we had time to change that yet, but
I changed it.
you did. Fantastic, Val. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, please share any feedback you have from this call as well. One thing that I've certainly picked up is definitely like the question of how do we make sure that people who are not from the tech world can understand and be able to participate. So that's something we can have a think about and work on for future calls. But yeah, please, if anybody has anything they want to shout out or anything, you want to put in that board, please do so. But yeah, otherwise we've come to the end of our call.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We will look for any other notes and ideas in job board, ideas for presenters or just framings. Thank you for your contributions in kind of this like social interoperability idea, translation and things like that. So we'll definitely be noodling on that and would love to noodle with you in Jotboard and in Metagov Slack. So yeah, thank you all so much. I see, Charles, you have a quick question.
It's quick. I mean, I'm all excited. I was just curious because maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear like if there's a quick maybe 30 seconds or a minute on what's happening with the tooling, and I understand a few things through my circles and the edges, but yeah, what's sort of on the front burner? Thanks, and it's just great. I love it. Yeah.
That's a big, hefty question. I think you'll have to join the MetaGov Slack Deliberative Interoperable Tools channel for that one. But yeah, thank you all, and hopefully see you at the next one. Appreciate you all, and have a great rest of your days.
Thank you to you, Val, as well for hosting.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.